Welcome learners for our lessons today. I want to take you through a good lesson, an interesting lesson today. Just from our previous lesson, we were discussing about rivers. We looked at the characteristics of some rivers in our continent, that is Africa. But today I want us to just shift at least and talk about climate. So of course climate we have discussed in previous classes, but of course I like to talk about climate and say that climate is the average weather conditions of a place observed for a long time. So usually this takes around 30 years. So we can't just maybe an area we find that maybe it starts raining like for a few weeks, and of course we conclude and say this must be cool and wet. No, we are saying that climate takes an average or a long period, something to do with 30 years and above, 30 to 35 years. That is where we are able now to come up and conclude that the climate of this place, for example, is either cool and wet, hot and dry, or so on. So today, let me take you through these factors that influence climate. Because when you talk of climate, what are the factors that are behind this? What are these factors that influence climate? So the main factors, we have relief. We have the latitude. Factor number 3, altitude. Number 4, the winds. Number 5, the ocean currents. Factor number 6 is the distance from the sea. Factor number 7 is the nature of the coastline. So, learners, I want to explain all these factors. Of course, how does relief affect or influence climate of a place? How does latitude affect the climate of a place? So I will start with relief as a factor, and I'm going to explain this by saying that this is the general appearance of the landscape in relation to the altitude. The general appearance, or we are talking of the landscape. Now, how does this come in? The real feature that has a major influence on climate is the mountain. So when you talk of relief, something comes in your mind and we are talking over the mountain. Now, something to do with the mountain, of course, we know that mountains, of course, act as one. Some sources of the rivers start from the mountain. We are also talking about the cool and wet climate. Then we are also talking of the formation of rainfall. For example, the relief rainfall, or sometimes known as the orographic rainfall. Let's check on the latitude. How does the latitude affect the climate? But before I go to the latitude, I need to sketch something here. This relief. I have a diagram. Let me sketch a diagram here. So we have something like this in form of a mountain, like that. Then we have, this is the sea. So we have winds blowing towards that direction. We also have some winds blowing towards that direction. This is the sea. Now this is X, that is Y. Then we have the cloud somewhere there. Then there is rain falling down. So this Y, it is cool and dry. you look at that diagram, this side we have rain. So this is called the windward side. Then this side is called the leeward side. What happens on this side? We can talk of 1. Dairy farming. 2. Cash crop farming. Tea, paretram, coffee. What happens on this side? 1. Pastoralism. 2. We are talking about the ranches and of course we have talked of pastoralism and the ranches. So when you have this diagram, so we look at some towns in the country. For example, a town like Nyeri. So Nyeri is within the highlands. So Nyeri, of course, we will find it on this side. A town like Nanyuki. Nanyuki, we will find on this side, that is on the leeward side. Nanyuki. So we can be given a question about this diagram. Of course, sometimes a question comes concerning this diagram. So they will ask you the towns. For example, which of the following town is most likely to be found on this side X? They give you towns like Isiolo, Nanyuki, Nyeri, and sometimes they give you Garissa. So basically, the town that is found on this side, it should be Nyeri, because Nyeri is in cool and wet. Then factor number 2, that is the latitude. 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 Now, how does latitude affect climate? How does it influence climate? When you talk of latitude, latitude refers to the distance from the equator. Remember, we have the major lines. We are talking of the equator. When we sketch something like that, the map of Africa. Now, we have our equator there. So the distance, we are saying that latitude is the distance from the equator. Now, how does it affect climate? So, latitude close to the equator are called low latitudes, while those ones far from away from the equator, they are called high altitude. So temperatures, we are saying, temperatures are usually high near the equator. So latitude now comes in, whereby the distance from this major line, like that, areas around this, the temperature is high. So it means that when you're moving from the equator toward the North Pole, the temperature decreases. Again, if you're moving from the equator toward the South Pole, again the temperature decreases. Meaning that now, the distance, it is going now to depend on the distance from the equator to the area where it is. So that is now, the latitude comes in. We are saying the distance from the equator. So meaning that now, areas within the equator, they will experience high temperatures. Areas far away from the equator, when you talk of the temperature, is low. Low temperatures. Our next factor is the winds. I'm not going to talk about all the factors. We're going to stop at factor number 3. How does the winds affect climate of an area or a place? Now, the wind We say that wind is a moving air, air in motion. Air in motion. So winds are named according to the direction they blow from. So we have the onshore, those winds that of course they blow from the land towards the sea. Then we have the offshore now. Those are of course the vice versa winds that of course they blow. That is now, we are saying we have the two types, the onshore winds. The onshore winds bring rainfall to the mainland. For example, we have the southeast trade winds along the east coast of Africa cause rain in places such as Mombasa because they carry moisture from the ocean. We also have the westerly that blow towards Mediterranean areas of Africa. They also cause rainfall. Then we also have southwest trade winds, also cause rainfall in areas such as the DRC, Gabon, and the Cameroon. Then the winds that blow from the mainland to the sea are called now the offshore. And these winds, of course, they bring dryness to the adjacent land. So learners, what I want you to do, you go back to your books, look at these factors, go through these factors, try and write short notes about them. Remember each factor, of course, how it affects climate. So I want to end the lesson by saying, learners, try to be close to your books. Furthermore, I will explain the main factors on our next lesson. Thank you, and may God bless you.